To be very honest, I think of this as the beginning of that. It sounds kind of grandiose, but it's like the beginning of Star Trek age, where you're treating a patient, no, no incision. They get up from the MR and literally they go home and they can have dinner with their family.
You can't replace part of the brain.
You treat them the same.
Source of truth for the MedTech industry.
Coexists with the prophets.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the MedTech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the $90 billion company. They had help up high, a lot of things.
The State of MedTech with your host, Omar M. Khatib.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. So I'm coming off from my very first AUA, American Urology Association. A lot of really cool technology that I saw there, one of which was Profound Medical. And today we're joined by its CEO, Arun Menawat. Arun, thank you so much for joining the show. How are you doing?
Thank you, Omar. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to have like a great discussion because we both have our libraries behind us. And, we talked a little bit about books earlier on. So I love meeting other leaders who are also have a love for books,
Yes, very passionate about books.
It's fantastic. Well, maybe before we talk about Profound, let's talk a little bit about you and your background. Like, where did you grow up? How did you get into MedTech? And what were you doing before Profound? Because you have a very unique and interesting background.
I do feel I'm very lucky, Omar, to be honest. I grew up, my parents migrated from India. We grew up in the Baltimore, Washington area. I went to the National Institutes of Health in a joint program with the University of Maryland. And it was in the late 70s and very early days of, medical device development. It was NIH had just started the biomedical engineering program there. So I was very lucky to be part of that. But I think, to be honest, I've had the opportunity to do game-changing things. And Profound is actually my third medical device company and fifth overall. And, I think the common theme, there has been a purpose. There's a real purpose here. And so the first one was a company that was developing diagnostic imaging software. So it was called Sidara Software, and we wrote software for GE, Philips, Siemens. We became the largest diagnostic imaging software company. And, I used to ask the question like, okay, if you're using imaging to diagnose better, why would you not use imaging to actually treat better? Why can't we give the imaging as a modality to the surgeon so they can do a better job of treating? Because ultimately, treating and curing patients is the name of the game. And so Sidara was the first diagnostic imaging, but then one of the board members at Sidara asked me to work with Novadaq, which was effectively a startup. And it was about showing blood flow, perfusion of live tissue, dead tissue. In several cases, we could segregate between cancerous cells and normal cells. So it was something we brought on to the market, completely new idea. 95% of people told me I was crazy to doing it, but ultimately we survived, became a very, very strong growth company. And I'm proud of the fact that really right now, really any significant surgery that goes on, our technology is used to do so. And then the next question was, well, if you can improve the surgery that they're doing, can you use imaging in a way that becomes an inherent part of the foundation of developing a new treatment? And that is what Profound is that it allows us to treat using imaging in real time and actually show the surgeon where the cancer is. And so, to be very honest, I think of this as the beginning of that. It sounds kind of grandiose, but it's like the beginning of Star Trek age, where you're treating a patient, no incision. They get up from the MR and literally they go home and they can have dinner with their family and they're treated. And at the end of the procedure, the surgeon can clearly see that they've actually killed the cancer. So I feel very lucky to be associated with this type of a career.
That's fantastic. I want to go back real quick before we talk more about Profound. You've led a lot of groundbreaking imaging companies. Sedera, I was not as familiar, but Novadaq, I was very familiar with. I knew people who worked there, and I remember the vast growth and adoption you guys had, and eventually, I think Stryker acquired Novadaq,
Yes,
correct?
yes, that's right.
So, and now you're at Profound. So, I'm wondering what's been kind of let's say like a common thread in how you've chosen to lead across these different ventures.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the common thread for me has been uh, a building credibility. I think that you have to be genuine. You have to build credibility with every stakeholder. And an entrepreneur doesn't work like a hierarchical, you build hierarchical organization. You hire the smartest people you can find. And so, for example, at Profound, we have people from Sidara. Some of the best software programmers are from Sidara. We have people from Novadaq. Some of our most serious sales leadership team is from Novadaq, because there is this theme of bringing people who are go-getters, who understand that when you say something, that it has been thought through, that it is about building something that is going to actually help the patient. And it is not just about, oh, well, we're going to do this and we're going to be very successful and our options will be worth a lot of money. That will happen. There's no doubt in my mind. But doing that right thing and building that credibility has been really, to be honest, that has been the common theme. And and part of the credibility is when you make commitment to people, no matter who that stakeholder is, you work really, really hard to make sure that you meet or beat that commitment.
I love that, and it kind of makes sense too because you have an MBA, but in reality, your training is as an engineer. You have a PhD in chemical engineering,
100%.
and I feel like for me, I speak to so many different leaders, and I like to analyze MedTech leadership, kind of like ESPN analysts analyze like NFL draft picks, and I'm wondering that because of your engineering training and essentially your mindset, I wonder if that influenced your leadership style in clinical settings because you sort of led with uh, you know, doing things from a
Yes.
point of being genuine and stacking that up.
Yes. Omar, I am very proud of being an engineer and a scientist. I think I will always be an engineer and a scientist. And you're absolutely right that I tell people, whether they're investors or they're employee or customers of ours, that we think in those terms. And I think it works because it allows you to be incredibly logical. It allows you to be incredibly data focused. And I think our customers are smart urologists. They understand that. They understand the value of logic, and they understand when we say to them, hey, here's the clinical data, or if they come to us and say, hey, I would like for you to change this parameter or make some adjustments to your software, they know that we understand, that I understand what they're saying, and that we will focus on that. And even if you talk about sales and marketing, these engineering principles are really important, because I think about, when I think about sales, yes, it is a lot about relationships, but it's also about advancing the ball and to be able to understand what is working and what is not working when you're doing something that is so game changing that there's no mold that exists. You're building the mold of how to sell or how to market, and using these scientific principles to build the right mold. Even there, it really applies. So it is part of my DNA, no doubt about it.
Everybody, quick break. If you're a MedTech CEO or a product leader, you're going to want to listen to this sound. I want you to imagine you're about to have a product launch. You've poured your time, your budget, your reputation into a device you're about to launch. And after all of that effort, your FDA submission, poof,
gets rejected because of cybersecurity. This sounds dramatic, but it's actually not. It happens all the time to medtech companies, especially recently with everything being digitized. This happens so often because medtech companies treat cybersecurity as a checkbox when it's now a non-negotiable design pillar. The FDA's 2023 guidance didn't suggest cybersecurity, it demanded it. So if you're not ready with threat modeling, penetration testing, SBOM management, incident response, and airtight documentation, you're not launching, period. And here's what most entrepreneurs don't realize. Scrambling to fix these issues last minute can cost over $250,000 and delay your launch by months, which imagine the investment of getting delayed, right? The more you spend time in review limbo with the FDA is lost revenue, lost market share, and lost investor confidence. And yet, so many founders and entrepreneurs I talk to, they still treat cybersecurity as a postscript instead of a strategic advantage. Now, I've held off bringing this to my audience as a topic until now because there just wasn't a medtech-focused cybersecurity firm that I trusted, and that changed when I found Blue Goat Cyber. They specialize exclusively in medtech cybersecurity. They've helped companies like bioMaru, Inogen, Natera, along with nimble startups to get to market faster with a 100% FDA success rate. I had the chance to meet the founder, Christian Espinosa, and his story really resonated with me. So after he sold his first cybersecurity company, Alpine Security, Christian actually faced a personal health crisis. He ended up in the hospital, and that moment made him realize how vital and vulnerable medical devices really are because a medical device saved his life. So he built Blue Goat to serve medtech CEOs and founders just like you. Whether you're pre-revenue or scaling fast, Blue Goat can offer fixed-free pricing, unlimited retests, and no surprises. This isn't bolt-on security. This is built in from day one. You wouldn't launch a device that hasn't been clinically validated, so why would you risk launching one that's vulnerable to attack? Blue Goat will secure your device, simplify your submission, accelerate your approval, and they'll do it in a way that fits your budget, your timeline, and your team. So here's what I want you to do next. Go to bluegoatcyber.com, schedule a discovery call. They do these amazing calls. They'll do an analysis with you, educate you more, because the cost of waiting could be everything that you've worked for. So that being said, go to bluegoatcyber.com and schedule that call now. Let's get back to the episode. Sort of transitioning to talk about Profound, something that I thought was really interesting. So first, for context, for people, when Stryker acquired Novadaq, it was a deal that was valued a little over $700 million. And so I mentioned that because at that point, you don't need to be working anymore. You could have just taken it easy and gone and enjoyed your life. And so I personally want to thank you. And this is something that I feel like is very unique to our industry, is that leaders like you have these big exit. You make more than enough money that you can just go do whatever you want. But you decide to go back to work for the sake of delivering better technologies to help patients. So I want to say that I'm personally very grateful for that.
Thank you so much, Omar. As I said, I feel very lucky. You're right, it is not about the money. It's about the skill that we have developed that will help this world bring incision-free therapies to the market. I feel very responsible, and I feel very grateful to be part of something like that.
Oh, absolutely. Now, on that note, though, what I noticed was that literally after selling Novadaq to Stryker, you joined Profound, I think, like 4 weeks later. Yeah. So like what drove that decision so quickly? How did you know that TULSA-PRO was going to be the next big thing? Like what gave you that level of conviction?
Yeah. So a very good friend of mine was the CEO of Profound. And he had called me 2 years before I was looking to leave Novadaq. And he said, you need to join my board because I need to have some people who've taken companies public, and I need to have that, be able to have that advice. So I had joined the board, so I knew the company to some extent. But I think, as you said, this is a very unique industry, and something very unique happened on the day we announced that I was stepping down from Novadaq. The CEO called me and he said, I need you to come and take my job. literally in those words. And I said to him, like, you are obviously smoking something because no one wants to, give up their job in something that is so promising. And so I said, look, I, we're friends, so I'm not listening to any of this. I would like for you and your wife and myself and my wife to go meet for dinner, take a couple of days off, meet for dinner. And if we decide at that point that I should join, then I will consider doing it. And we had dinner, and both of them, they felt this was the right thing to do, that he was more of a technology person who had brought the company to the stage he could, and he felt that I was the right person. And I just was so humbled by that. And I thought it fits my theme of my life. And he said that to me too, that it fits very much. And that is why I picked, because the day it was announced, there were many, many people from Wall Street who had called about, there were like 4 or 5 different options. And this one, really it was the CEO who invited me, why I thought it was important.
That's awesome. And it's always good to kind of have that sort of a connection, and especially that level of endorsement. So that being said, let's talk a little bit more about the technology. And by the way, for those of you who are listening, whether you're an investor or a clinician, you can learn more about the company at profoundmedical.com. They're also a publicly traded company. You can look up the stock at the ticker PROF on the Nasdaq. So that being said, and by the way, disclosure, I am a shareholder, by the way. As of this past weekend. Yeah, as of this past weekend. Yeah, as of this past weekend when I saw tech and everything. So, but kind of simply put, like, what is Profound Medical? And again, the flagship product is TULSA-PRO. What does it specifically do and how?
Yeah. So TULSA-PRO is about treating the diseases of the prostate. Either it's cancer or it's called BPH, which is benign abnormal tissue, and it causes difficulty in urination. These are the two main diseases of the prostate. Now, what's unique is that prostate is in a very congested place. It's right after the bladder, right above the rectum, and in between the bladder and the rectum are these nerve bundles, and these nerve bundles control our erectile function, urination function, rectal function. And then there are muscles right in that region also, and these muscles control when you want to go urinate and so on. So they control the on-off switch effectively, right? And so what happens is that when cancer appears or these diseases appear, the standard therapy is remove the whole prostate. And when you remove the whole prostate, you end up removing these nerve bundles, and you're pulling these or stretching these muscles that control urination. And that is why it's about the anatomy. It just changes that whole area, and most men will lose their functions, and about 20% of it will be in diapers for a long time. So the foundational thing about TULSA is that we use an MRI. We actually treat the patient in the MRI. Now, MRI has been described by our urologists as like a 4K vision, because once the patient is in the MRI, they can actually see the whole prostate. They can see the boundaries of the anatomy. They can see where the nerve bundles are. They can see the muscles. They can see the cancer. And so, as you can imagine, if you can see it, you can avoid killing the wrong things, and you can kill the things that need to be killed. And so the other thing that we do is we insert a little catheter into the center of the prostate, and we have a unique heating technology that uses sound. So when we're talking, sound that touches our ears gently heats our body. That's how we give energy to each other, actually. And so that little bit of sound gently heats. And the MRI also provides the temperature map. So the surgeon not only sees the anatomy, they see the body, the temperature of the prostate increasing. And when it hits 57 degrees, at which point tissue normally dies, it automatically stops. It's autonomous, completely autonomous. So it's the most gentle way of killing tissue, or most natural possible way of doing it. It's the best imaging source. And by doing all this, as I mentioned, there's no incision. The blood vessels that are in that region automatically coagulate or cauterize, so there's no bleeding. And because we're not, charring the tissue or boiling tissue or doing something really unusual, the temperature of the prostate drops very quickly after the tissue dies. So when the patients wake up, very few need even analgesic. So this is why we talk about the fact that you wake up, you don't even know something has been done, and you can go home. But the most important part of this technology is, no blood loss. And a lot of people say, well, what's the big deal? No blood loss. Well, the big deal is that these patients are generally older patients, 55 plus, and many of them are on blood thinners. And so if you have no blood loss, patients can be treated even if they are on these blood thinnings, so low risk. It can also be for patients who might be 80 plus. Historically, we don't do major surgery on patients above a certain age. But TULSA can be done. We've treated patients who in their mid 80s, no problem, 89-year-old, no problem. So that is the big deal, that it really allows us to treat patients who would normally not get treated.
Got it. Got it. And let me for those who are watching on Spotify and YouTube, let me share my screen so you guys can sort of see what this technology looks like in terms of the procedure. So this is on the Profound Medical YouTube page, and let me zoom in a little bit to expand the screen. So I'll just kind of walk the audience through so that those who are just listening. So we have a transurethral ultrasound ablation procedure that we're going to be doing. Okay. So here's the device, and this sits, does this by the, I guess, not the FDA standards, but you guys do categorize this as a robot, correct?
It is. It's an autonomous robot. It's driven by software, and the robotic arm basically turns that catheter to provide that sound. The yellow flame-like structure you see is actually sound.
Got it. Perfect. And so here it's sitting within an MRI machine. So the patient gets positioned, it gets inserted. Okay. And I think the important part here is that using software, and this image kind of highlights it, is that using software and sound, you're able to target the correct area of the prostate within certain margins. And I think the thing that's important for people to understand is that prostate procedures are very difficult because of the nerve bundles and the anatomy that's around it. And so a lot of it, the key these days is anatomy sparing procedures, correct?
100%. And this is, in terms of, for those who are technical geeks like me, this is real AI with real value. The boundaries of the prostates are automatically defined by the AI software. So when the urologist goes in, they see these images on the screen. Those boundaries are drawn for them. They can accept it. They can modify it. There's a pen on the screen. They can modify it. Ultimately, they make the final decision, but the treatment design is automated. The treatment itself is completely automated.
Got it. And so when this is happening, it's a urologist who's actually controlling it. It's not like an interventional radiologist, correct?
When we started, a number of interventional radiologists got very excited. They really are, because they love the fact that they're treating a serious disease in an MRI. But ultimately, it is a urologist tool. So I would say 80-90% of our physicians are in fact urologists, and
Interesting.
they're getting there. I mean, they're not imaging experts. They have never not been imaging experts. But one of the differences we talk to them about is, we're not asking you to diagnose the disease. We're asking you to treat the patient. So you're looking at the anatomy. You're not looking at the cellular structure to determine what grade of cancer this is. That's the radiologist's job. They do that anyway. right?
That's
So
interesting.
urologists can
I
do
didn't.
this now.
I like that as a shareholder. I do like that this is something that both, so it's targeted for urologists, but interventional radiologists can pick this up. And I think for the audience to kind of understand this sort of unique dynamic that's happening in medicine is that through technology, it's kind of disrupting who the owners of certain procedures are. And, so the byproduct of that is, yes, like, certain procedures are not solely owned by a specialty. Like general surgeons used to do
Correct.
everything. And
Yes.
all these specialties pick things off. So general surgeons don't make what they used to make. The benefit, though, is that I think that no matter, we have a crisis in across the world where there's not enough clinicians for a lot of things. So this kind of expands access to care for patients. And let's face it, it does make it more competitive, which is a good thing.
Yes, it is a good thing. And I mean, it used to be that, the patient would go to the doctor and basically follow the instructions, right? And today, you know, patients are very knowledgeable. They read, they have information, and they can actually directly go to the specialty that gives them the best option.
Absolutely. Now, I want to ask you something about TULSA. So TULSA seems to address, as you mentioned, not just cancer treatment, but also, quality of life. So issues around continence, erectile dysfunction, mobility. So how do you balance both the clinical and emotional narratives when evangelizing this kind of technology?
Yeah. So um, the the main thing is, as I said, credibility. And so what we say to people is that, you know, historically, the the prostate itself is like a capsule. And so what happens is that cancerous stem cells, even if you have cancer that's not visible, cancer stem cells are still inside that prostate. And so what we're educating the patients on is that the original idea of treating the whole gland or majority of the gland is still the right thing for the purpose of durability. And that's where we spend a lot of time educating our patients on. And what we are saying to them is that this precision, that you can see this, and we show them images, that this precisions allow you to actually get that full treatment, but at the same time save all of these nerve bundles. So you can see it. And we do images after the treatment is done. And we have a lot of clinical data that shows these prostates shrink down to by over 90% over time. So I think that's how we're kind of going about it, is saying, don't just take our word for it. Look at the data, look at the images so you can see the value of this technology.
And that's a good kind of a segue. Something I do really want to ask is, so again, AUA, this is the first AUA that I was at. And so one of the other companies that I saw a lot was Procept Biorobotics. Okay. And
Yes.
their robotic device is hydro. So they use water for what they call Aqua Ablation. What's the difference between Profound Medical's TULSA-PRO and Procept Biorobotics hydro system?
Yeah. So, Omar, first of all, prostate is different in shape and unique to each of us. So, one person can have a prostate that is 20 cc's in size. Another person can have a prostate that is like a cantaloupe, maybe 300 cc's. So, that customization is really important. And that is one of the reasons why even though it's a large market, there is no one technology that is the answer to everything. And that has been that way ever since, last 40 years. You have many, many options. So I don't envision any one technology is going to take it away. I think our patients and our physicians should really be knowledgeable about everything. Having said that, let me talk about the differences, and I want to talk about the differences from the perspective of the patient, because that matters the most. So first of all, with the Profound technology, as I mentioned, there's no bleeding, there's no hospital stay. Versus with the Procept, as you said, there is a water blade. It's basically a knife. It's a water knife. It cuts tissue. but it's cutting raw tissue. And so when it hits the blood vessels, they stay open. So they have to go back in and they have to cauterize these blood vessels. But most patients, vast majority of the patients, will have to spend one night in the hospital to do that. And there are a number of patients who will have bleeding risk. In the clinical trial, many patients were required actually transfusion also, right? So that huge difference of that you can go in, and as I said, in our case, because we're warming the tissue to kill temperature, there's no blood loss, and patients even with these comorbidities can safely get our treatment. The second thing that is very interesting is that, as men get older, PSA is a test that is a blood test that we do to determine the health of the prostate. And statistically, the data shows that if PSA is above 2.6, now normal PSA is less than 1, but if the PSA is above 2.6, there's at least a 10% risk that a patient has cancer also. Now, it may not be consequential cancer, but the fact that we use an MRI, the physician can see it when they're treating with our technology. So even those patients who have BPH and they suspect that maybe there is some, it is much easier for the physician to say, oh yeah, I see a couple of cells here. I might as well just prophylactically take care of it while I'm in there. So I think that confidence, as I said, it's all about credibility from our perspective. That confidence that we can not only treat these patients properly, with no blood loss and so on, but we can also treat in case they have any little bit cancer. We might as well get it out of the way also. And my third point is that because we have this gentle kill approach, these dead cells get reabsorbed by the body and the prostates shrink. We have clinical evidence, statistically significant clinical evidence, that these prostates shrink over time. And so the body doesn't react to it, and that it also gives us durability. Versus when you're cutting, this tissue, there's not as much ability to customize. If there's a little bit of lingering cancer, it's likely to just stay there because they're using ultrasound, we're using MRI, much better technology from that perspective. And so I think that from the perspective of the future, really you want the best imaging modality. You want the most gentle way of killing tissue. You want that ability to customize because every prostate shape is unique. And you want to see that prostate shrink because not only that it sort of solves the problem for good, but if you remove the tissue and it shrunk, likelihood, of getting other diseases is likely to be less. It's just natural.
All right, everyone, quick commercial break. If you're a MedTech CEO/founder, or maybe you're a sales or marketing leader at a startup or a scale-up, you're going to want to listen to this. Are you struggling to get in front of your ideal audience, whether that's investors or perhaps clinicians who want to adopt your product? Maybe you're getting ghosted. You send emails and messages and nothing comes back, nothing happens, right? Or worse, nobody knows who you are, right? In business, visibility is everything. And I always tell people, if you want to persuade before persuasion can happen, you have to learn how to get attention. So if your sales team is desperate for traction, clinicians don't know your name, investors have never heard of you, you're losing opportunities every day. And that needs to change now. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. That's where my company, Katib & Co. comes in. We don't just do marketing, we do growth. We figure out how to engineer markets by creating magnetic messaging that makes you impossible to ignore. And we build high impact strategies, of course, using social media, but other channels such as email, text, and others to help turn content and messaging into commercial pipeline, and it leads into closed deals. As an example, we worked with a surgical robotics company in raising a $31 million Series A, and then they needed help on their pre-market release. So we packed their CRM with 198 surgeon leads and nurtured them down. That ended up becoming 4 closed hospitals. 4 hospitals closed and adopted this technology within a period of 6 months, and they got 2 great key opinion leaders in the process. So whether you're a startup founder wearing too many hats, or maybe you have a marketing team that's just spread too thin and they don't have the expertise, My team and I plug in and partner up with your company, and we amplify your reach. From crafting powerful sales scripts to optimizing your team's demo calls, creating content, having it go out on a consistent basis, we transform your outreach into a growth engine. So if you're ready to dominate your market, you're ready to become a no name and people to know of you and take your calls and take your meetings, I want you to act right now. Don't wait anymore because you've already wasted plenty of time. Go to growmymedtech.com. That's growmymedtech.com. And I want you to schedule a quick call. My team and I will give you a free analysis with 2 to 3 actionable ideas. There's no strings attached. And if we're a fit, great. We can get partnered up and we can help you go to the next level. And if not, look, the ideas are always free. So do not wait and don't waste any more time. Go to growmymedtech.com right now and let's make you the go-to name in your niche. Now, let's get back to the episode. It seems that, I would, and again, I'll move away from this topic, but just as we're talking about it, Procept's technology is really impressive, at least when I got the demo and everything. And it seems like, one thought is that for certain ASCs or hospitals, etc., that don't have an MRI suite, that's where it makes sense for Procept to be adopted. For Profound's TULSA-PRO, you have to have an MRI for it to be done, correct?
Yes. So that's an interesting point because ASCs are great places to get things done. And those technologies where you do not need a hospital stay generally go to ASCs. And ASCs are cleaner. People come in, they get treated, they go home. And physicians like ASCs because they have a lot of flexibility. There's a consistent staff. And the good news for Profound is that CMS has approved reimbursement for the Profound treatment in ASCs, whereas it is not approved for Procept.
I see.
In fact, right?
But the ASC have to have an MRI.
And they have to have an MRI. Now, ASCs generally want an MRI because they also...
It's good. It's a very good business for imaging. And again,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, the ASC market's getting very interesting, I think, Arun, because
Yes.
Again, it's cleaner, it's better, it's more, but also on the imaging side. So for example, I'll use myself as an example. I had to go get some imaging done, and I had to go to an imaging center that was owned by a hospital, and it was so hard to get an appointment. I actually just gave up.
Yes.
I just decided not to do it. That was probably not a smart thing to do.
Not
it was for little bit of a lower back injury. I'm fine now though, but had it been something more serious, but yeah, it's a very good cash business. And
Yes.
Something I did read about the TULSA-PRO and Profound is that it seemed like a lot of patients originally were paying out of pocket for the technology, which is great. It's a great testament to technology, but now it sounds like you guys have adequate reimbursement codes for it.
We do. As of January, we have reimbursement, and the reimbursement is better than that of, quite frankly, any other technology. It's better than Procept technology. It's better than robotic prostatectomy technology also. And so our physicians can do well. The ASCs can do well. ASCs, as you said, want an MRI. And we think that this kind of makes it economically really viable for them to do so. And so the TULSA procedure doesn't take that long. And so if they get a MRI plus TULSA, we call it the TULSA Plus program. And we can justify the MRI purely on TULSA patients. 1 day a week, they do 3 to 5 cases a week, they can justify it based on reimbursement.
Got it. And, on that note, something I want to bring up is a little bit personal, but you said it's okay to ask about, is that you yourself are actually a patient of TULSA-PRO. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Omar, I'm a very proud patient of TULSA-PRO, and I'm one of the early patients of TULSA-PRO. My prostate was very large, and I'm also a biker. And so there was significant prostatitis and all kinds of things. And But as I said before, I'm a scientist and an engineer by training. I understand the value of this technology, and I was totally not afraid. And I got it done about 4 years ago, within the first year of getting the FDA clearance. And quite frankly, I cannot be happier because my prostate is shrunk down. My PSA is down to less than 0.7. It's stable. I fly, I would fly across the country and I would always pick the aisle seat because I had to go to the washroom every hour. Now I've told my EA, book me into the window seat because I just want to relax and not have the commotion of the aisle seat. So I can sleep well. As we talked before, I like reading, so I don't have to take a break all the time. I could not be happier. And really, it is quite amazing. The first thing, as soon as I woke up after this, I said, okay, are we done already? The only reason I knew that the procedure has been done is because we do put a catheter to be able to keep the prostate safe for a few days. Outside of that, I did not even need an aspirin.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. And how did you originally know that you needed to get this kind of procedure? Was that you're going to the bathroom often? How does somebody find out that they have some issue with their prostate and they're going to need this kind of thing done?
Yeah, I mean, the simplest thing, there are two simple things. One is the frequency of bathroom visits, and the second is PSA test. And if PSA, as I said, about 2.6 or higher, I would say at least get tested. Now, in the urology community, they say, well, PSA of 4, they will want to do more testing. I think 10% risk, personally, I think 10% risk is enough of a risk to check things out. But in my case, Omar, was interesting. I was visiting one of our customers in Atlanta, and we were meeting, and I'd gone to the washroom twice, and Dr. Bush
Twice,
did during
within
the
an
meeting.
hour?
Within an hour, yeah.
Oh,
Because
okay. Yeah, that's a lot.
it's a lot, and I drink coffee, so I do have to go a couple of times in the morning. At least at that time, I did. And so Dr. Bush, who was the treating physician, he said, "Hey, you're going too often. I have the MRI right here. I want to just check your prostate." And we did. An hour later, he said, "This is pretty big. You need to get a treatment." And I said, "Well, if I'm going to get a treatment, I'm going to TULSA." And within 2 weeks, we got it done.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. I love hearing that. I think it's a big testament to the technology, especially that you got sick, and I think
100%.
that
Yes.
says a lot, right? That shows a lot of conviction.
Absolutely. And Amar, the other point that you made already is big one too, is that we had about 4 years where there was no reimbursement in the US. And patients were paying $35,000 to get the treatment done because all in costs were high in this early stage. And we did not have shortage of patients. And even though now it is being reimbursed by Medicare, vast majority of our patients are still going to those concierge practices and they're paying for it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty amazing, actually. And again, it's good that it's nice when patients are paying cash, but it's better economically for like a hospital to adopt the technology, knowing that you guys have the reimbursement codes.
Reimbursement, yes.
So something I wanted to bring up is that you guys had this CAPTN trial. So this is kind of a landmark moment for you guys, not just for Profound, but arguably like the field of prostate cancer treatment. So let me kind of give a little bit of a background for the audience. So in this was essentially a level 1 head-to-head study comparing TULSA to robotic radical prostatectomy. Okay, and for those who may be familiar, so robotic radical prostatectomy is the thing that made Intuitive Surgical intuitive. Okay, so essentially, you guys randomized 201 patients across 23 sites. The perioperative results were pretty striking. You had zero blood loss, 80% shorter hospital stay, significantly lower pain, and essentially better outcomes across mobility, self-care, and daily activities. And so, like, with this data in hand, like, what do you think this trial signals to the broader urology community, and how do you envision it reshaping the standard of care?
Yeah. So, Omar, first of all, you're exactly right. The data is outstanding. And the one that I feel is the most interesting is that at the end of 24 hours after the procedure, our patients are up and about, and it takes the robotic surgery patients 2 weeks to get to that stage. So we're saving 2 weeks of their time. So this is this is really, really important because the urology community feels that the robot is the best and the greatest technology, and it is. It has been that, right? So for them to then change their paradigm and say, well, I'm using the best available today to go to something that is even better, we needed to do this trial. Now we can speak with confidence and the data that matters to them, the way they want to see it. And to be able to say, here are the benefits. Here are the benefits to the patients. Here's the benefit to the safety, which they really care about, because we had no class 4 complications. And so that safety is important to the urologist. And so I think not only that it allows them to say, okay, now after 20 years, something is available that's even better. This is important. For our insurance companies, it's also really important because, again, the same paradigm, they're saying, well, I'm paying for the greatest. What more do you want? Well, now there's level 1 data that says, hey, you can now pay for something that is even better. So I agree with you. This is a landmark study. It's the first time any company has been able to successfully do a full level 1 study in prostate cancer. A number of them have tried, never could even complete recruitment, but because of the enthusiasm related to TULSA, we were able to do it and recruit very quickly. I think this data is going to continue to resonate, and urology community is going to continue to support. We should be able to get uh, even the societies to start making the recommendation that this treatment should be standard. It will ultimately become part of the consent that every patient who has cancer should be informed of something this strong data. And I think that gives me tremendous confidence in driving adoption of the technology.
Yeah, no, 100%. And again, like, just from my perspective, and by the way, like, just so everybody knows, like, yes, I very, very recently purchased shares in the company because after I came back from AUA, you guys had just published this. And when I was reading it, the first thing I thought was like, oh, this is actually a legitimate challenge to Intuitive. So for those who don't know, Intuitive's got close to a $200 billion market cap. They do a lot of different procedures, but their radical prostatectomy and prostate treatment robotically, that's like their flagship. And so for me, and again, this is not investment advice. Please go do your research. You shouldn't even listen to me. I'm a guy on the internet with a podcast. But when I read that, that's when I was like, okay, based on that and looking at Profound's current stock price, I felt that I felt that the company was undervalued, and I like the stock. So, I'm excited to see like what happens next for you guys. So with this in hand, what do you think, and this is a tough question to ask, but like, I'm sure you've been asked it on earnings calls, but why isn't the technology being adopted left and right by urologists? Like, what do you think has been the barrier?
Yes, I think, getting the level 1 data certainly has been one of them. Also, the reimbursement certainly has been a major barrier. It's kind of intricate that you would say, well, okay, if you have so many patients who are willing to pay this much money, why would you not have adoption? The problem is that the hospitals are not used to just charging cash. They're used to adopting technologies that are reimbursed. And so in unique situations when someone is willing to pay, they will do the procedure. But I think that very few practices are only concierge practices. And so it's a limited market. And even after you get reimbursement, it does take time for this CFO's office to say, well, I want to wait till reimbursement actually is happening and that the economic model is indeed what the company has indicated, so on. So it does take a little bit of time for that to happen. And I do face, that standard curve of early adopters and mid adopters and then laggards and so on. I think we're at that early adopter phase. And, leading hospitals, you name it, now have it. And so I think part of the way we're going to get there is by having these leading hospitals starting to say, I've actually treated 100 patients myself, and I can vouch for the fact that the clinical data in these trials, I can validate that my data is consistent with that data. We're dealing with cancer, right? It's not just BPH where, it's a pretty fast outcome. With cancer, people, urologists are very careful. But if I do compare to, how are we doing? How did we do during the cash pay phase of a game-changing technology? Not many companies can get to 10 million revenue run rate, to be honest, in that cash phase. And we got to the top of that curve. And so I think at this stage, I feel like we're fully dressed up. We've got all of the boxes checked. And in the last 4 months, we've built a phenomenal sales team. This is majority of the sales team is the previous sales team that helped me build a Novadaq sales funnel and the growth there. So there's a very good pipeline. It does take some time to close capital deals, as you know, and the team is only about 4 months in that time frame. But yeah, I do anticipate growing pretty quickly in the second half of this year, and then certainly I think we will hit a hockey stick sometime in 2026.
That's fantastic. And the other thing I wanted to ask you about is that you do other than TULSA, you have another technology called Sonalev.
Sonalev, yes. Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, I'm very happy to. So, Omar, as we talked before, I think the bigger mission that we're on is how do we take surgery from, blood surgery to bloodless surgery. And so prostate is the number one. But the second one to me is we are already doing clinical trials in pancreatic cancer. As you know, pancreatic cancer is one of the most life-threatening cancers. 18% of the people survive.
It's what Steve Jobs died of.
Which is Steve Jobs died of that. And liver cancer, it turns out to be that it is caused by other cancers, but liver cancer, people die from it, and so on. So we are doing clinical trials in those areas. We also have a few sites running in Europe and Asia where we're treating women's diseases, the disease of the uterus, like adenomyosis and uterine fibroids. And if you look at the growth of Intuitive Surgical, as you mentioned, they started with prostate. They went to the uterus, which was a big market for them. Then they went to general surgery. We think that we can bring this new image-guided, incision-less or incision-free treatment to the masses of a variety of different serious diseases. And that's our mission.
Got it. That's really exciting, especially in terms of like the different applications. But I would say, like, do you feel that, like, with the potential, I feel like this happens with MedTech companies sometimes, which is they're able to get new indications, and then what often happens is that they might lose focus, right? Does that ever come across? And I think one of the reasons why Intuitive have been so successful is that they just have radical focus, right? So does that ever cross your mind? Because like leaving the urology space and going to these other areas, that's different specialties, different conferences. All it's a lot, right? So how do you manage that as a leader?
Yeah. So I think that focus is critically important. And that is how we built the company. That is why, even though it took a little longer, but I wanted to make sure that everything, we go step by step and make sure everything is in place. And so our energy, 99.5% of our energy, is on driving adoption of the TULSA technologies. We're really a prostate company at the moment. And part of it is because I know very well that even though everything is in place, we still have to break some walls, change the paradigms, which is hard work. And so the sales and marketing team, they know that a few years down the road, new things will happen, but that is their focus. That is how their comp plans work. It's all on prostate. And that is where we spend our energy. Now, having said that, I do want to build the IP portfolio for these other technologies. And I do think that once the adoption happens for prostate, other applications can be driven at a rapid pace. So the way I'm looking at this is, let's get to a high growth company using prostate, stay focused on it. And then as we go into that high growth rate, be able to sustain that growth rate with additional applications. But if there's anything that gets in the way of adoption for prostate, we will stop that activity.
Got it. Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think there's plenty of room for you to grow in prostate. Plus, there's pretty stiff competition because you have Intuitive is one. Intuitive's one of those companies you don't mess around with.
No.
And then you have Procept. Procept has grown quite a lot there at a $2.5 billion market cap. And then there's many others. So not that they're not indicated for this, but you have Histosonics. Histosonics was one of the big companies talked about at AUA with their histotripsy. Yeah, so they're focused a lot, I think, mainly on like liver and kidney. But as soon as they get the indication for it, they're gonna go after prostate for sure.
Yes. So I agree with you that it's a very competitive space. I do think that we have the best technology. I think that Procept has done a great job of driving adoption. And I think we have to do even better. And that is certainly our sales team completely gets that. And I think Intuitive Surgical is the smartest management team you can get, quite frankly. So
yeah, I agree.
They have the most highest record of sustainable, profitable growth. So we have a lot to learn from them. We have all of the things that we need to be able to compete effectively. So I'm absolutely very confident that it will happen. But I completely also agree with you that focus is critical to our success.
Yeah. It'll be really exciting to follow along and see how you all do. And Arun, thank you so much for carving some time out and coming on the show. But before we let you go, sometimes I do fun questions at the end and everything. Since you and I are both big readers, I'm going to ask you the question that I hate to get asked, which is, I won't say what's your favorite book, but what's a book that or books, you can pick 2 or 3, but what's something that you feel like you recommend, more often than not?
So I think the books that I recommend the most, particularly to the science and the engineering types, are books that talk about the future in general. Because I do think that as entrepreneurs, we have to be able to see the future. We have to be able to buy into that future. And so rather than one book, I think that the one I'm reading right now is on holistic medicine. And they all talk about the fact that, we can do wellness care rather than sick care. And I think that's a very big topic these days. I also recommend to people that, particularly the scientific types, is we have to do a better job of understanding the soft skills of so that we can do a better job of connecting with the people, not just communicating, but connecting with the people. And so those books are really important to me. I think the other one I feel very strongly about right now, and I talk about it inside our company all the time, is I think marketing as a function is and also going through a tremendous change. How do you build awareness? How do you measure whether or not a marketing campaign is working or not? It used to be a one-way street. Someone would say, let's use this logo, and you don't know if it's the right logo or not. But today you can tell. Go on the internet and see which one resonates. And so I think even marketing is becoming a much more of an analytical science than it used to be. So those are the three categories I focus on the most.
I love it. And what's last question for you is like, what's a book that you've read in the last few months that you really love that you would recommend to people?
Well, if there's one book, I would recommend the book called The Measure What Matters by John Doerr.
Oh yeah, I have that.
It is a fantastic
I love when I know
book.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yes.
So that's a great book. So for those who aren't familiar, so like John Doerr was it Sequoia? No, Kleiner Perkins. He was a chair of Kleiner Perkins.
Correct.
And that was the famous book that I'll impress you with how well I know it. So Andy Grove of Intel wrote High Output Management, which is a great book. Book about how an engineer thinks about managing an organization. From that, I think it came out of there, the concept of OKRs and stuff. But John Doerr wrote a whole book just on OKRs, or objective key results, and how to manage it. And there's really an art to it, an art and science.
It's easy to read it, but it's really hard to implement it.
It's very, you know why I think it's so hard to implement in organizations? I think it's hard because you can't, it's an iterative process, and it takes a lot of discipline. You go through a lot of pain. It takes maybe a year or two to really get it down in a company. And I think that because of that, a lot of people don't have the patience or the pain threshold to really stick to it,
100%. But I even am looking to change the thing we call job descriptions. I'm saying I don't want to have job descriptions. I want to have OKRs. Because OKRs really focus the people on what is the deliverable and connects them with the rest of the company.
That's a really good idea, Arun. You should do that, honestly. Because even when I used to go to interview a company, and nowadays when I mentor people and they go to interview, I tell them the first thing you need to ask is what are the 2 or 3 objectives or problems that this person's being hired to solve? Yes. It makes a lot more sense because even now I'll get called. I had a call this morning. A CEO called me. He's like, "Hey, we need a VP of marketing, right?" And I'm like, "Okay, well, what are the 2 or 3 things that person needs to solve?"
Accomplish. Yes,
right? Because it can't just be everything. There has to be. You have to choose, right?
Yes, that's right. And that's how, to be honest, I give it a lot of credit because, we've had limited financial resources, but we've been able to do a lot of things because we just stay focused on those things.
I love that. That's fantastic. Well, Arun, thank you so much for coming on the show. For those who are listening again, if you want to learn more, go to profoundmedical.com to look up the CAPTN study. I just recommend typing in Profound Medical CAPTN study on Google, and to check out their stock. Their ticker is PROF. Remember, I'm not a financial advisor. You should not listen to my advice when it comes to investing. But if you would like to go and learn more about the company, that's where you should go check it out. As always, if you learned a lot from this episode, you loved it, forward this episode on to a urologist, maybe forward it on to somebody who's an investor. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you want to do me a big favor and join so many other people who have helped grow this podcast, take a second and look below. If you're on Apple, give us 5 stars and write a short review. If you're on Spotify, just give us 5 stars. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like button. And most importantly, if you can, subscribe. We release so many different episodes that you may miss. Be sure to subscribe and turn your notifications on. You get extra points with me if you subscribe across all 3 channels. Thank you so much. And if you felt like this episode helped you, send this to somebody who would really enjoy and appreciate it. Share and spread the love. We'll see you all next time.